You don't belong at the adult table, Nora. Sit with the kids. You'll be more comfortable with people at your level. My mother said it loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. 14 people, my sister's in-laws, her husband's business partners, 3 of their wives, all of them suddenly very interested in their salad forks. I was 38 years old. I held a medical license in 4 states. 3 weeks earlier, I had performed a 12-hour reconstructive surgery on a 6-year-old boy with a cranial arteriovenous malformation that 2 other surgical teams had refused to touch. He walked out of the hospital on a Tuesday holding a stuffed elephant. I sat down at the folding card table in the corner next to my 8-year-old nephew who was playing a game on his iPad and didn't look up. Nobody said a word. If you have ever been the invisible one in your own family, the one who pays the bills and parks in the back and gets handed a paper plate while everyone else uses the china, please stay with me. Because to understand why I finally stopped being invisible, you have to see exactly how dark it got first. My sister's name is Priya, 3 years younger, perpetually golden, the kind of woman who photographs well at every angle and knows it. Her husband, my brother-in-law, ran a commercial real estate development firm out of Atlanta that my mother described to strangers as building the future of the South. What she never mentioned was that the firm had been 48 hours from Chapter 11 bankruptcy 6 years ago when I quietly transferred $180,000 from my personal savings into a holding account through a financial consultant who handled it without either of their names appearing on the paperwork. My brother-in-law thought it was a bridge loan from an institutional lender he'd been courting. He closed on a warehouse district project in Buckhead 2 months later and credited his own persistence in investor interviews. The firm tripled in value over the next 4 years. He bought my mother a house in Buckhead with a 3-car garage and a pool. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Durham, North Carolina, driving a 2017 Civic with 94,000 miles on it, because I had spent the better part of a decade routing money to the people in that dining room while they told anyone who would listen that I had wasted my potential. The $180,000 was not the only transfer. There was $34,000 the year my mother's roof failed and the insurance company disputed the claim. There was $22,500 when Priya's husband needed a gap covered on a land acquisition deal, and she called me crying at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. There was the $8,200 I wired to settle a contractor dispute that would have triggered a lien on their primary residence. And there were the smaller ones, the ones I didn't track anymore because tracking them had started to feel like keeping score against myself. Grand total across 11 years. Just over $310,000. The number lived in a spreadsheet I kept in a locked folder on my work laptop. I had never shown it to anyone. I paid in secret because I kept believing that one day the family I was holding together would look at me and see me. That if I just gave enough, was patient enough, stayed small enough, the love I was subsidizing would eventually become real. That belief was the most expensive thing I ever bought, and it never arrived. The dinner where my mother sent me to the card table was the Saturday before Thanksgiving, 2023. Priya had hosted what she called a Friendsgiving preview, her word not mine, at the Buckhead house. The real Friendsgiving was for her actual friends. This one was for the in-laws and the business associates, which meant the bar was open and the conversation was about deal flow and school district rankings and which neighborhoods were coming up. I had driven 4 hours from Durham. I had brought a bottle of 2019 Sonoma Coast Pinot that cost me $68 because I'd looked up what Priya's husband liked to drink and I wanted to bring something he'd appreciate. My mother accepted it at the door, set it on a side table, and never opened it. She served a grocery store Prosecco instead. I was wearing a good blazer. I had made an effort. She looked at my outfit for exactly 2 seconds, then looked past me at the driveway. "Where's your car?" "Behind the magnolias." "I didn't want to block the partners." "Good." She lowered her voice by exactly 0 decibels. "Priya's husband has a client here tonight who invested $3 million in the Midtown project. Don't bring up medicine, okay? It makes people uncomfortable when they can't relate." I had delivered her granddaughter 17 months earlier. Emergency C-section, 34 weeks, placental abruption, mother hemorrhaging on the table. I had kept both of them alive. I did not bring this up. Inside, the dining table was set for 16 with linen napkins and gold-rimmed flatware that I recognized. I had bought it for Priya's wedding registry 6 years ago. At the far end of the room, a folding card table had been set up with a paper tablecloth printed with autumn leaves. My mother steered me toward it with one hand on my elbow. "Priya's littles are back here with you. You're so good with kids." I stood at the card table for a moment. My nephew was already there, indifferent. My niece, 4 years old, was asleep in a pack-and-play in the corner. I sat down. Across the room, Priya was holding court at the head of the adult table, her husband at the other end, both of them glowing with the specific confidence of people who have never had to wonder if they belonged somewhere. When the food came out, it was served family-style to the adult table first. A caterer in a black apron walked the platters around the big table in a full circuit before a second pass brought smaller portions to where I was sitting. The mashed potatoes were already half gone. The carved turkey that arrived at my end had the drier, stringier cuts, the parts that don't photograph well. My mother called out from the adult table without turning around. "Nora, the kids' mac and cheese is in the blue pot on the stove. Can you heat it up? You know where everything is." I got up and heated the mac and cheese. When I came back, Priya's husband was telling the story of his firm's turnaround, the miraculous bridge loan that materialized just when they needed it, the institutional foresight, the vision. His client nodded with the enthusiasm of someone hearing a good gospel story. My mother beamed from across the table like she had personally ordained the miracle. I sat back down at the card table. My nephew looked up from his iPad for the first time all night. "Aunt Nora, are you a real doctor?" "Yes, buddy. My dad says you just look at brains as neurosurgeon." "Yeah." He considered this. "Is that like a real job?" I told him yes. He went back to his game. Under the card table, my hands were completely still. I was doing the thing I had learned to do in the OR. The breathing, this deliberate separation between what I felt and what my face showed. I had learned it under pressure. I had used it in rooms where people were bleeding. I had not expected to use it at a Friendsgiving in Buckhead sitting next to a child who was asking if my career was real. After dinner, my brother-in-law made a toast. He thanked the people who believed in us when the chips were down. He did not say my name. He looked at my mother when he said it. She raised her Prosecco and dabbed at her eye. I drove 4 hours back to Durham that night. I got home at 1:17 a.m., ate a bowl of cereal standing at my kitchen counter, and went to bed. I did not cancel the automatic transfer that was scheduled to post to my mother's home equity line on the 1st of the month. I had been making that transfer for 3 years. It covered the minimum payment plus principal reduction on the loan she had taken out to upgrade the Buckhead kitchen. I didn't cancel it. Not yet. I want to explain something clearly, because the question I know is forming right now is, why? Why did I keep paying? Why did I keep showing up? Why did I sit at that card table and heat up mac and cheese and drive 4 hours home at midnight without saying anything? The answer is not that I was weak. It is that I had spent 38 years being told, in 100 different ways, that love in our family was conditional, and that the condition was usefulness. My mother had raised us with a specific economy. The one who contributed the most was the one who was valued most. For the first 20 years of my life, Priya contributed beauty and ease and social grace, and I contributed nothing the family could display. When I became a surgeon, I thought I had finally found the currency that would buy me in. I paid in money because I thought money was what the family respected. It took me 11 years to understand that they didn't respect me for the money either, they just spent it. There is a specific kind of grief in realizing that the family you have been trying to earn your place in has never actually had a place for you. It doesn't hit you all at once. It comes in at the edges, quietly, over a very long time, until one day you are sitting at a card table at your nephew's Friendsgiving, and something inside you makes a decision without consulting you first. The decision was not angry. That surprised me later. It was just final, like a door closing from the inside. I did not know yet what form the ending would take. I only knew that the spreadsheet with $310,000 in it was going to stop growing. 3 weeks after the Friendsgiving dinner, I was in the OR at 5:47 a.m. finishing a craniotomy when my phone, left on silent on the scrub text station per protocol, collected 7 text messages from my mother in the span of 11 minutes. I didn't see them until I was in the scrub sink at 8:20 a.m. The first 3 were about Christmas logistics. Who was bringing what time dinner was, had I booked a hotel yet because the guest room is full. The guest room being full meant Priya's in-laws were staying in my childhood home, and I was expected to find a Holiday Inn. The 4th message said, "Priya wants to announce something at Christmas dinner. Don't make it about yourself like last year." Last year I had mentioned, when asked directly by an uncle I rarely saw, that I had been promoted to chief of neurosurgery at my hospital. I had mentioned it once. My mother had changed the subject within 30 seconds to Priya's kitchen renovation. The 5th message said, "Also, your brother-in-law's parents don't know you're a doctor, so please don't volunteer it. It creates an awkward dynamic." I read that twice. The 6th said, "We're doing a gift exchange cap of $50 this year, which should be easy for you, since you're always complaining about loans." I had never complained about loans. I had paid off my medical school debt in 5 years on an attending salary while quietly subsidizing her mortgage. I had never said a word about it. The 7th message said, "Can you also bring a vegetable side? Something simple, don't overthink it." I stood at the scrub sink for a long moment, water running over my hands, and thought about the morning I had just had. I thought about the 6-year-old boy whose OR chart I had personally reviewed at 4:30 a.m. I thought about his parents in the waiting room, the father pacing, the mother holding a rosary that she'd worn smooth on the beads. I had walked out to them at 8:05 a.m. and told them their son was in recovery, that the resection was clean, that he was going to be okay. I had put my hand on the mother's arm when she started crying. Then I had gone to the scrub sink and read 7 texts from my mother asking me not to volunteer that I was a doctor. I dried my hands. I texted back, "I'll bring the roasted carrots." I did not cancel the transfer. Not yet. Christmas dinner was at the Buckhead house. I arrived on time, carrying a ceramic dish of roasted carrots with harissa and honey that I had made at 6 a.m. before my drive. My mother opened the door, looked at the dish and said, "Oh, that looks complicated. I hope it goes with everything." The in-laws were there, and Priya's husband's college roommate and his wife, and a neighbor couple my mother had been cultivating for 2 years because the husband was on the board of a hospital foundation. My mother introduced me to the neighbor as Priya's older sister who works in medicine. The husband, whose name was Arthur, asked what kind of medicine. Before I could answer, my mother said, "She does surgical consulting. Very technical. Arthur, have you tried the brie?" Arthur turned toward the brie. At dinner, my mother served the carrots I had made last, after everything else had been plated, and only for people who asked. She hadn't labeled the dish, so no one knew it was homemade. Priya's mother-in-law complimented it, said it was delicious, and asked my mother where she'd ordered it from. My mother said, "Oh, a little place I know." I looked at my plate. At the end of dinner, Priya tapped her wineglass and stood up. She was pregnant. 8 weeks along, everyone erupted. My mother burst into tears, real ones, the kind I had never once seen her produce for anything I had ever told her. She held Priya's hands across the table and said, "This is the greatest gift." I smiled. I meant it. I was genuinely happy for Priya. Then my mother looked around the table with shining eyes and said, "This is what matters. This is what a real legacy looks like." She did not look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. After dinner, I helped clean up. Because I always helped clean up. I stacked plates and ran water and transferred leftovers into containers, and while I was doing this, I overheard my mother in the dining room telling Arthur's wife that Priya had really carried this family, that her son-in-law had built something remarkable from the ground up, that she was just so proud. Arthur's wife said, "And your other daughter, Priya's sister?" A half-second pause. "Nora? Oh, she's very dedicated to her work. She's just very focused on her career. She hasn't really found her path yet, family-wise." I was 38 years old. I was chief of neurosurgery. I had not found my path yet. I set down the container I was holding. I walked to the bathroom, ran cold water over my wrists the way I did between long cases, and looked at myself in the mirror for a while. Then I went back to the kitchen and finished the dishes. But when I got to my car at 10:45 p.m., I opened my banking app before I started the engine. The automatic transfer to my mother's home equity line was scheduled for January 1st for $400. The same amount every month for 34 months. I pressed cancel. Then I opened the ledger I kept in a locked note on my phone, the one that tallied every transfer, every wire, every gap I had quietly filled, $310,000 across 11 years. I sat in the dark in the Buckhead driveway for a long time. Then I started the car and drove home. The call came on a Wednesday in February while I was between cases. It was my brother-in-law. He never called me directly. In 6 years of marriage to my sister, I could count on one hand the number of times he had dialed my number without Priya prompting him. He said there was a situation. A serious one. A commercial lender had pulled out of a refinancing deal on their largest property, a mixed-use development in Midtown, and the gap was significant. He was working through options. He just wanted me to know it was stressful. I understood what the call was. It was a kite being flown, testing the wind before the ask. I said, "I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope you find a solution." A pause. "Right, yeah. We're looking at everything. Good luck," I said. And I meant that, too, in the way you can mean something and still know it doesn't change anything. He hung up. 2 hours later, my mother called. She led with 3 minutes of pleasant conversation. How was I sleeping? Had I seen the documentary about the national parks before arriving? Your brother-in-law is under a lot of pressure right now. This is a hard season for them. I know, he called me, did he? A small recalibration. Well, family supports family. That's what we've always done. I thought about the card table, the paper tablecloth with autumn leaves, the mac and cheese I had heated up while 30 feet away someone was toasting the miracle that I had paid for. I know, I said. I have to get back to the OR. I'll talk to you soon. I hung up. I did not call my brother-in-law back. I did not wire anything to anyone. I opened my calendar and accepted an invitation I had received 2 weeks earlier from the chair of my department, a black tie event in April, the Medical Foundation Gala, where they would be announcing the endowment of a new neurology research chair. A significant naming gift had been confirmed, and the chair's office wanted me present. I had known about the gift for 6 months. It was mine. I had arranged it quietly through the hospital foundation, routing the endowment from a settlement I had received from a medical patent licensing agreement 3 years earlier. I had asked for my name to stay off the announcement until the gala. I had my reasons. I marked the gala on my calendar and closed my laptop. The Medical Foundation Gala was held at the Umstead Hotel in Cary, North Carolina, on a Friday evening in April. It was the kind of event that filled 3 ballrooms and brought in donors from 4 states. My department chair, a warm and meticulous man named Doc Drosy, had told me to arrive by 6:30. I had spent 45 minutes that morning on a phone call with my mother, who had called to tell me that my brother-in-law's refinancing situation had resolved itself. She did not say how she didn't know, and to ask if I was coming home for Easter, and to mention that Priya's pregnancy was going very smoothly, and that she looked radiant, just absolutely radiant. She asked if I had anyone in my life. I said I was focused on work. She said, "Nora, you're not getting any younger. I'm just saying. There's more to life than a career." I thanked her for calling and ended the call and stood in my bathroom in my robe, hair still wet, and made a deliberate decision to feel nothing about that conversation for the next 12 hours. I was good at compartmentalization. It was a skill the OR had required of me, and the family had required of me, and for once, those two things aligned. I put on the black dress I had bought for the gala. I put on the earrings my residency mentor had given me when I passed my boards. I drove to the Umstead and handed my keys to the valet and walked into a room full of people who had been looking forward to seeing me. My department chair found me within 2 minutes. He shook my hand with both of his. "You look like someone who has no idea how tonight is going to go," he said. I said, "I have some idea." He laughed. By 8:15 p.m., the ballroom had settled and the program had begun. Dr. Ose made his way to the podium and began the announcement about the new research endowment, its scope, its mandate, the kinds of breakthroughs it was designed to support. He talked for several minutes about the donor, her commitment to the field, her surgical record, her work with pediatric neurological cases that other institutions had declined. He was precise and warm, and he did not rush. Then he said my name. He said that the Nora Neurology Research Endowment would fund research into pediatric cerebrovascular anomalies for a minimum of 20 years, and that the gift was the largest individual donation in the hospital foundation's 43-year history. The room stood up. I had known it was coming. I had arranged every detail, and I still was not entirely prepared for the sound of 300 people rising at once, or for Dr. Osi extend his hand across the podium to shake mine, or for the way the room felt, warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. I gave a short speech. I thanked my team. I thanked my mentor, who was in the room, and who was crying, which she would deny later. I said that the work mattered because the patients were real, and because the field was still young enough that every breakthrough reached someone directly. What I didn't say, I thought about a card table in Buckhead with a paper tablecloth. I thought about roasted carrots nobody claimed. The video was posted by the Hospital Foundation's communications team that same night. A short clip, well lit, of Dr. Ose reading my name and the room standing. It was institutional and formal, and very much not designed to go anywhere beyond the Foundation's donor list. It went somewhere else. By Saturday morning, it had been picked up by a local news outlet, and then a regional one, and then, because the number was striking and the story was clean, a female neurosurgeon, the largest individual gift in the Foundation's history. It landed on a national medical news aggregator with a readership of around 2 million. My phone started ringing at 14 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. Then I looked at the notifications. My mother had called 4 times. Priya had texted twice. "Is this real?" And then 40 minutes later, Mom is very upset that she didn't know about this. My brother-in-law had sent a LinkedIn connection request. I put the phone face down on my nightstand and made coffee. At 9:30 a.m., I checked my messages. The voicemail from my mother was 2 minutes and 43 seconds long, which was unusual. I listened to all of it. She started calm, proud even, the careful pride of someone recalibrating in real time. "I always knew you had it in you. I was just talking about you the other day. Arthur, from the neighborhood, you met him at Christmas. His wife called me this morning." Then the pivot, arriving right at the 1-minute mark. "I just don't understand why you wouldn't tell us. This is a family moment. We should have been there. I had to hear about my own daughter from a neighbor." And then the final turn. "You've always done this. You've always shut us out. I don't know where that comes from, Nora, but it isn't healthy. Call me back." I deleted the voicemail. Then I opened my banking app and looked at the long history of transfers in the account I had used for the family payments. 34 months of home equity line payments, the $180,000 wire, the roof, the contractor, the smaller ones. I transferred the account's remaining balance to my research fund's charitable account, which was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. Then I called my mother back. She answered before the second ring. She started talking immediately. The neighbor, the news article, how it looked that she didn't know, the appearance of family dysfunction, and then back around again to why hadn't I told her. The loop was tight and fast, and I recognized it. This was how she handled things that destabilized her sense of narrative. She talked until she found the version of the story that made her the center of it. I let her run the loop twice. Then I said, "I need you to let me talk." She stopped. That surprised her. I had never asked her to stop talking before. I've been paying your home equity line for almost 3 years, I said. Before that, I paid to fix your roof. Before that, I covered the contractor lien on Priya's house when you called me at 11 p.m. and told me they were going to lose it. 6 years ago, I wired $180,000 to cover a gap in my brother-in-law's development deal so that the firm he just credited in the news didn't collapse. Silence. He doesn't know it was me, I said. Priya doesn't know. You didn't know about the home equity line because I never told you. I paid quietly because I thought for a very long time that being useful was the same as being loved. That if I held you all together from underneath, eventually you would see me. My voice was steady. I had used this voice in rooms where it mattered enormously that the voice be steady. 3 weeks ago, I sat at a card table at a dinner party in your house, while you told a room full of people that Priya was carrying the family. Last Christmas, you told a neighbor I hadn't found my path yet. Last month, you called me to hint that my brother-in-law needed money and led with family supports family. I paused. I know exactly what family supports family has meant in this family. I have the receipts. I've always had them. She said my name, just my name, nothing else. Her voice had a texture I hadn't heard before. I'm not calling to get an apology, I said. I know what I'm not going to get. I'm calling because I needed to say it out loud one time to you directly, and now I have. Nora, I'm going to take some space. I love you. I'm not interested in performing at your table anymore. I ended the call. The space I took was more than she expected. Priya called twice that week, and I answered both times, briefly, warmly, without engaging the topic. I sent a gift for the baby, a beautiful one, because the baby had done nothing wrong. I texted my nephew on his birthday. I held the edges of the family carefully without holding the center. My brother-in-law emailed me 2 weeks after the gala. The email was 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph acknowledged that he had heard, through Priya, that I had helped the family financially at some point and that he wanted to say thank you. The second paragraph explained that his firm had stabilized and that the Midtown property had been refinanced through a different lender. The third paragraph asked if I might consider a conversation about opportunities for family investment in a new project he was developing. I read the email twice. Then I replied, I'm so glad the firm is in a better place. I'm not in a position to participate in investment conversations. Wishing you and Priya and the baby all the best. I did not hear back. My mother called again 6 weeks later. She did not mention the money. She did not mention the gala or the dinner or the card table. She asked if I had seen the news about a hospital merger in Charlotte. She asked about my caseload. She asked very carefully if I might come for a visit. I said maybe. I didn't commit. She said, I miss you. I believed her. I also knew that missing me and seeing me were two different things, and that seeing me would require her to see everything else. The card table, the mac and cheese, the carrots nobody claimed, the 2 minutes and 43 seconds of voicemail that made me the problem. And I didn't know yet if she was capable of that. I was not going to wait to find out. On a Sunday morning in May, I drove to the hospital at 6 a.m. because I always drove to the hospital on Sunday mornings. The parking garage was quiet. The halls smelled the way hospitals smell before the day shifts arrive, antiseptic and cool and purposeful. I checked on 3 patients on the neurology floor. The 6-year-old boy who had been my most complex case was 3 weeks out from surgery and ahead of every milestone. His mother was there when I came in, reading a book in the chair next to his bed. She looked up when I knocked on the doorframe and her face did what it always did when she saw me. I sat with them for a while. Not a doctor visit, just sitting. Later, in my office, I opened my phone and looked at the message thread with my mother. The last text she had sent was a photograph, the Buckhead backyard in early spring, dogwoods blooming, the pool cover still on. Just a photo, no caption. I looked at it for a long time. I had grown up in that yard. I knew exactly where the light came from in that photograph, which corner of the porch my mother stood in to get that angle, what the dogwoods smelled like in the morning. I loved that house. I loved her. Those 2 things had never been the question. The question was whether love required me to be small, whether it required a card table and a paper plate and 11 years of secret payments and a voicemail that made my grief into her inconvenience. The answer was no. The answer had always been no. I had just needed long enough to stop auditioning for a yes. I set the phone down on my desk. Through the window of my office, I could see the atrium of the hospital's new neurology wing, the one the gala had funded, the one that would carry my name on a small plaque by the entrance, the one where, in about 18 months, researchers would begin work that might one day mean a child like my patient went home without surgery at all. I had paid for that. Not secretly, not to be seen, because the work was real and the patients were real, and I had the means, and that was reason enough. I had learned the difference between giving to be loved and giving because you had something to give. The first one bankrupts you. The second one is just who you are. I picked up my coffee. I had 2 consults at 9 and a department meeting at 11, and a life I had built entirely on my own, from scratch, in a field I had chosen before anyone told me whether they approved. The dogwoods would bloom again next year. I didn't need to be in that yard to know what they smelled like.